Welcome everyone to tonight's school committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order at, looks like 7:30. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for the special meeting of the school committee. Tonight, we are going to discuss our superintendent search and discuss finalists that have been chosen by our screening committee. So I am going to, at this point, turn the chair over to Jen Bryson, who's going to lead us off.
Great. So the first order of business, I handed out a draft of a thank you letter for all the screening committee members. I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions or additions. I'll read it out loud. On behalf of the Wilmington School Committee, we want to thank you for serving on the Superintendent Search Screening Committee. We understand that serving on this committee involved many nights, countless hours, and personal sacrifices. As you know, one of the most important responsibilities for a school committee is hiring a superintendent. You have played an important role in helping us find our next district leader. We are truly grateful for your dedication and your service as a member of the Superintendent Search Screening Committee. Fondly, the Wilmington Public School Committee. Is that okay? Do you have any questions?
Is this going out to everybody other than Sean?
Yeah, this is just the template with Sean Gallagher's name, but every single person who served on the
Okay.
committee will receive this.
Oh, okay.
Any further discussion?
Anything else?
I think it's a lovely, well-put letter.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken Storlazzi. It's a lovely letter.
All right.
All right.
Seeing no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve. So moved, with the second from Tom. All those in favor? That is approved.
Great.
Unanimous,
We'll
Trustee.
mail those this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and I have one more thing to read, and then I'll pass it over to Art. We are pleased to report on the activities of the Wilmington Superintendent Search Screening Committee. Over the past 2 weeks, the screening committee met on several occasions to review applications and interview candidates for the position of superintendent of schools. We enjoyed our conversations with applicants representing a wide range of experiences and backgrounds. We thank all those who expressed an interest in becoming our next school district leader. The screening committee reviewed all the applications and subsequently selected a number of candidates who were invited to meet with the screening committee for a preliminary interview. Following the preliminary interviews and after much discussion and consideration, the screening committee during its meeting on January 22nd, 2018, voted to recommend 4 candidates for further consideration by the Wilmington School Committee. The 4 candidates listed in alphabetical order are Glenn Brand, former superintendent, Acton-Boxborough Regional School District; Nan Murphy, Director of Accountability and School Improvement, Lowell Public Schools; Patricia Lambright White, Assistant Superintendent of Pupil Personnel Services, Melrose Public Schools; and Michael Wood, Director of Student Services, Leicester Public Schools. On behalf of the school committee and the town of Wilmington, I would like to thank the members of the screening committee for the many hours they devoted to reviewing applications, interviewing candidates, and deliberating during the preliminary selection process. The conversations were lively, insightful, and courteous. It was a pleasure to work with this group of truly dedicated people. So, respectfully submitted, Jennifer Bryson. So I have a copy for everybody. And I think with that, I can turn it over to Dr. Betancourt.
Is that all right with you, Steve? Most certainly. As a follow-up to Jen's very kind comments, I have for each of the school committee members the application materials for each of the 4 finalists. What I'm giving you in this packet is confidential because it will be considered a personnel file, assuming you hire one of these candidates. So these documents are for your eyes only. I will have another set, I'll explain in a minute, another set of documents for the public. So Steve.
Thank you. That's okay.
I have. Peggy. Tom. And I have Mandy's here. Can I give that to someone? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can take it for now. and then
Okay,
everybody gets-
okay, fine.
Thank you very much.
Now, in addition to those documents, so that the public has an awareness, I'm also giving each of you, these are public resumes. These will be shared with the public, including the press, and it's the public resume of each of the candidates that are recommended as the final. Okay? So the documents in the envelope are confidential, these are not.
Thank you.
One for Manny. Now, in addition to that, I have documents that can be distributed to the public if you would like them distributed. There are 20 copies of each of the applicants' resumes here, which I'll leave in your possession. Okay.
Thank you.
Again, those can be given out to the public. And to help us through the evening, I have a little guidance here that will hopefully be useful to you all.
Thank you.
Welcome, this is Manny's, if you like that one. Welcome. Shake your hand as well. Well, first of all, I want to, if I may, just say a couple of words about the actual screening process from sort of an outside perspective. I just have to congratulate the screening committee. It was just a really wonderful group of people to work with. Just intelligent, dedicated, good listeners, people who really wanted to do the job well. Kept your candidate profile front and center for all of the discussions that we had about the candidates as they interviewed the candidates. And the other thing they kept front and center were the kids. I was just so pleased to see so much emphasis on what's good for children and who, as a leader, is going to be good ultimately for the children of the district. Just a phenomenal job. And I think they represented the town of Wilmington really to the highest standards. Just a very, very nicely rounded group of people that were just a pleasure to deal with from my standpoint. Also, I think it's important to indicate or to emphasize the positive climate that Jennifer and Peggy created for this group. I mean, their leadership was extraordinary, really. And I didn't do a lot of it. I sat back and just sort of watched it happen. And I can say that they did just a wonderful job of bringing everyone's point of view into the discussions, keeping the discussions focused, and again, helping the folks in terms of other differing points of view and how those all are incorporated into the decision-making process. Just an excellent job by both of them, and I really have to congratulate you for a job really well done. I also want to thank Ken and Tristan, who did a lot of behind-the-scenes work, and were there anytime, at least as I could see, anytime they were needed. They were there and doing the things that needed to be done in terms of keeping the momentum of the group going and keeping the various tasks aligned properly. And I want to thank them because they really spent a lot of time and were committed as well to doing, I think, a really good job. So ultimately, I think the decision-making process that I observed was just so well considered and so respectful of differing points of view. I think what you have in front of you is a cast of, or a slate of 4 candidates that are all bringing something different to the table. And I think that's a real service to you as a school committee, because you can look at them not only from the point of view of the superintendency, but also what they bring to the superintendency. So I hope going forward that, in fact, I know going forward that the work of the screening committee will put you in a good place as you move forward with the process. Tonight, what I'd like to do is just go through with you the next steps and talk with you about
how you might want to organize yourselves as a school committee going forward. The work of the screening committee was all done most of it was done behind closed doors in executive session, as is permitted by the open meeting law in terms of the preliminary screening process. However, we have another sort of element that kicks in at this point, in that all of your work as a school committee, or most of it, will be done in public. About the only thing you will do privately is your negotiation sessions when you get to that point. But virtually everything you do from this point on, in terms of developing your interview questions, the organization, the way you organize yourselves, the actual interviews of candidates, all of that is done in the public eye. So that will be different, and I think it's good to prepare yourselves for that. What I've done for you this evening is put together some materials that I hope will be helpful. Bring your attention to the folder that I handed out. What I'd like to do, on the left-hand side is the guide for the evening. And you may want to refer to that even after the meeting to sort of remind yourself of some of the things that we've talked about and some of the things that you'll have to think about moving forward. Directly in back of that guide is the multicolored document that you've seen before, which is the timeline for the search. And as you can see, and I can't really believe this has happened, but on the exact date that is on this timeline, you are doing exactly what this timeline said you were going to be doing, which is to announce the finalists, January 31st. So once again, thanks to your screening committee and the leadership of the screening committee, you are absolutely dead on in terms of the schedule for the search. All of the things above the pink are what have been done prior to the candidates getting to you. There's a lot of work. Again, a lot of people involved in the process to get you to this point. So after today, we're going to talk about all of those things that are down in the pink area of this timeline and help you sort of get your thoughts collected in terms of how you might like to move forward. Also in the back, on the left-hand side of the folder, once again, this is the document that you, as a school committee, produced, which is the candidate profile. This is the document that was continuously referred back to by the screening committee. I just have to say they really used this document as a guide. And I was not in all of the meetings, but in the meetings that I attended, the guide and focusing on the guide came up multiple times as people talked about the candidates. So I would suggest to you that it was a strong and powerful document for the screening committee to use, and I would suggest to you that it might be useful to you, even though it's yours, and so to speak, you wrote it. It would be useful to review it so that you understand what the screening committee was bringing to the conversation, how you might follow up on that. On the right-hand side, there are several documents. I won't go into them all at the moment because they will come up in the course of our discussions. But I think we might want to discuss how you as a school committee would like to move forward. There is an interview process that takes place. There is frequently a visitation process to your district that takes place. Sometimes, although not all the time, there is a visitation process to the candidates, or a visitation to the candidate's district or present place of employment. And then there are deliberations. So what we might want to talk about is the various formats, for example, that you can use. Typically, and I think I may have mentioned this to the school committee previously in another time when I spoke to you, typically the school committee sets up a day for each of the candidates, where the candidate comes in, visits various parts of the district with various people in the district, and then in the evening has an interview with the school committee. It's easy to do that. It's easiest, I think, to do that one candidate per day. However, you can actually do two candidates in the same day if you schedule sort of from opposite ends of the district and organize things so that you can do multiple interviews in the same evening. If you do each of the candidates on a separate day, obviously that's 4 days. If you choose to do 2 in a day, then obviously that reduces the number of days that you are required for visitations and interviews down to 2 days. In addition to the 4 days or the 2 days, however you wish to organize yourselves, you might want an additional date and evening when you come back and deliberate and make your final decision. So on the one hand, if you have an individual evening for each of the candidates, you're probably talking about 5 evenings. And if you are talking about doing 2 candidates in a day, then you're probably talking about 3 evenings or 2 days and another evening. So perhaps we could have some discussion about that, Steve, in terms of where people are thinking or how you're thinking.
So when the candidates visit our district, are we there the entire day?
Not necessarily. What you can do is you can assign a host, which may or may not be a school committee member, or it could be a couple of hosts, actually. And the host or the 2 hosts would accompany the candidate around the district, probably drive the candidate around the district, and see that the candidate gets to each of the appointed places, if you will, on time. The school committee, now after the visiting day has occurred, going to the schools and talking with teachers and perhaps, and more than likely talking with the administrative team, there's usually a break sometime around 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon where the candidate can catch his or her breath. And then sometimes members of the school committee will actually have dinner with the candidate, or you'll have a buffet served here in the school, perhaps somewhere. And then after that dinner, you will invite the candidate for an interview. The interview is typically an hour, maybe an hour and a half. At the school committee level, an hour and a half is not unusual. And then the candidate from there can go home. So it's a long day, but it's not a day that the school committee has to be available for the entire day. That can be assigned to others who may or may not be school committee members who are available and who can and act as a guide, if you will, and a host or hostess.
Are these typically done in successive days?
Not always. In fact, sometimes what I'm noticing is a lot of districts will do 2 prior to a weekend and 2 after a weekend to sort of give a break, so that the schools have an opportunity to recuperate, because this has an impact on the schools as well.
Certainly.
And you don't want to distract, you want to keep the distractions as minimal as possible. Not that it's a distraction, but that, it can interfere with things. So, Steve, you have a question?
Yes, sir.
The district visits to their sites, their districts, would you suggest that occurring before they are invited to our district to have a tour? Would that make more sense?
It's a great question. What I would suggest works really well, and we can talk about this, is that you have your interviews first, because you may choose not to visit all the candidates.
I gotcha.
So you may end up saying, these are all great candidates, but in terms of fit, these 2 are the 2 we want to pursue. That doesn't mean you rule the others out, but for now, those are the 2 you're focusing on, and therefore you don't make 4 visits to another district, you only make 2. Now, there are some school committees that don't make the visits to those other districts, and I think it's, you need to know that. I think it has value, and you certainly can get a lot out of it. But some districts are foregoing that because it takes time, for one thing, and it's hard to get people to be available. And what they're substituting for those visits to the candidates' districts are intensive interviews, where we would direct you to people that we've spoken to that we think can give you can speak to anyone you want, but we would suggest that you might want to focus on some people that we've spoken to that can give you particular insights about the candidates and in-depth information about the candidates that might be useful in your decision-making process. So you can decide on that particular piece of your work later on down the road, whether or not you want to make visits to the candidates' districts. I think perhaps the most important thing now is to determine how you want the interviews to flow and how you want the visits to your district to flow. Now, there's another way of doing this, which happens sometimes, and that is the school committee will conduct its interviews without a visit. In other words, without the candidate visiting the district. And then the candidate will be invited to visit the district after the interviews to speak with people. And so you can separate those two things as well. And for example, you could get 2, 3, maybe even 4 interviews in a day. I wouldn't suggest you might want to do that, but you could. And some districts choose to do it that way as well. The typical way is to set aside a day for each of the candidates, for the candidate's visit to the district, to talk with the various folks in the district, to observe the schools and maybe talk with the kids a little bit, and then the interviews in the evening. Okay? If you do 2, you might be asking yourself, how do you do 2 interviews in the evening? What do you do with the other candidate while you're interviewing the candidate? And the answer to that is that in a case like that, we would suggest that you'd have a community forum and a candidate interview scheduled at the end of the visitation process. So if you had 2 candidates visiting the district on the same day, and then it came time for your interviews, you would interview one candidate while the other candidate is talking to the community forum. And then you'd switch. The candidate that's talking to the community forum would then come to speak with you, and the candidate that you're interviewing then goes to the community forum. So there are all kinds of ways of doing it. It's a lot to think about. The other thing I would say to you is you don't have to decide tonight. I mean, you could think about this, and scheduling is not something that is prohibited by the open meeting law. I mean, you can't talk about substantive things, but clearly scheduling and that sort of organizing yourselves is permitted. You want to be careful how you do it, but that's something else that you could talk about if you wished. A lot to think about.
Yeah, and I
So
think,
many choices.
I certainly think some discussion regarding how people feel about doing multiple interviews and visits in a single day is something we should, Julie?
I was just going to suggest, because there are so many different options, it might make sense for us to have a subcommittee look at the scheduling and the logistics aspect once we as a big group decide how to attack.
That's a good idea, actually.
And I'm just talking a subcommittee for the logistics,
Right.
the scheduling, the visits,
Right.
ordering the food, locations, who's going to be the host, who's going to take the person, that kind of thing I think can be done in a subcommittee.
That's a great idea.
Because if we were to discuss it tonight, we could be here all night. There's a lot of information for us to digest.
That's very frequently done. And by the way, the subcommittee does not have to be made up completely of school committee members. You might have, you could have some other folks involved in that process as well. That's very typical. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. That's actually a good way to deal with it. Let me just introduce you to the stuff on the right side of the packet here. Again, I don't want to cause you to think that we don't think that you know how to interview. You clearly do know how to interview, but there are things here you might want to think about in terms of interview techniques to keep in mind. We've also, and we shared these also with the screening committee, there are a list of themes for interview questions. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other things that you might think about. But here are some of the common themes for interview questions that you might want to think about as you think about the questions that you want to ask. There are examples of interview questions. These examples, same examples, were given to the screening committee. The screening committee used them as a guide, but did come up with a lot of their own questions. And I believe, Jennifer, you have their questions. And then there are some questions here that we would suggest you might want to think about as your final interview questions. These are interview questions that tend to fall to your level at the school committee, questions that you might wish to be interested or might be interested in asking. And then, if you wish, we also provided for you a candidate interview evaluation form. You might not wish to use the form, but it could serve as the basis for your own personal way of looking at the interviews. People don't usually use the form, actually. What they do is they use it and make up sort of their own template of things that they're looking for in the candidates, and they do it that way. But you can use a standard form if you wish.
Can I ask you just a quick question on that?
Yep.
Would that be a memory aid or would it be a public document?
It
Because it's-
could be a public document,
Okay.
yeah. And in fact, your notes, virtually all of your notes are discoverable if somebody wanted them. So what you want to do is make sure that you're commenting in areas that are appropriate and that your comments are appropriate, yeah. It's never been a problem, but I think you need to be aware that virtually everything you do in public can become public. Also, there's an advisory sheet here on school committee members doing reference checks. Now, we will be doing reference checks, and in fact, we'll start them, since the names have been released, we will start them tomorrow. And that's in addition to the other kinds of checking that we've already done in terms of degree status and that sort of thing. We will be talking with candidates about, to ensure that they are who they say they are. In other words, what they've presented about themselves is in fact what they've done. They have a degree, they've done this kind of work. The other thing we talk to them about is their conditions of employment. We've already had one round of discussions with each of your 4 finalists about their employment conditions. And all of them, so far as we know, fall within the parameters that you folks have for employment. But we'll continue to ask questions about their needs for their conditions of employment. What we don't do, and what we really can't do, is interview references in terms of fit. Because really only you folks know what you're really looking for in terms of the person who fits your image or your view of what the superintendent should be. So we're interviewing from the technical side to make sure that everything they've said, they've done, and everything they present to you is in fact true. You may want to interview beyond that to determine that this is the kind of person that works the way, stylistically, works the way that you folks feel comfortable, communicates in a way that you folks feel comfortable, has the kinds of experience in negotiating with constituencies that you feel is comfortable, deals with kids the way you feel you would feel comfortable. So there are really 2 levels of interviewing. So this sheet is designed to help you in terms of how you might, if you talk to references, how you might ask questions of those references. Okay? And then we also have a guide here for visiting the candidate, and it just gives you some ideas of the things that you want to be on the lookout for if you choose to visit the candidate's place of employment. And then we also have a visiting team evaluation form which you can use. If you send a team out, or if you send a couple of individuals out to visit the candidate's place of employment, this might be useful to you. And then, I think we've just got a couple more. Here is this might be useful. This is a suggested itinerary for the candidate's visit to your district, just to give you an idea of how it might flow. Okay? And it can vary depending upon where how you want to arrange things. But this is one way of looking at the candidate's visit. And then finally, what the final sheet is, okay, you're there, you know who you want, what you have to do. This is the sheet that shows you how to bring everything to closure and bring your new superintendent on board. Okay? A lot to think about. We at NESDEC will be available for you anytime. So if you have questions, you should call. You have my cell phone number. Jennifer has my cell phone number. She texts me at 6 o'clock in the morning. 6:15 it was. We don't mind that. If you have questions, that's what we're here for, so we're happy to help you.
Yes, Lauren?
Just a quick, easy question. With regards to questions in preparation for the interviews themselves, how many questions would you ask each member, kind of try to formulate, and how do we kind of navigate not asking the same question, kind of? What would you suggest?
Okay. What we would suggest is that in an hour and a half, you might get through 8 questions. We would suggest that you have a dozen questions ready,
Okay.
and that you sort of prioritize the questions that you absolutely positively want to ask, and then have some additional questions as well. And also you want to think about, and I'm assuming that this would be at the the discretion of the chair, the opportunity to follow up on questions as well. I mean, you may hear something in an answer that you want more information about, or you might not hear something in an answer that you want information about. So, I think the chair, it's prudent to give the chair the opportunity to provide follow-ups if that appears to be in order.
And just for clarification, are you saying a dozen questions per committee member?
No,
So,
a dozen
okay.
in all.
Okay.
A dozen in all.
I was gonna say, we'd be here all
No,
night.
lot more than an hour and a half.
No, a dozen in all.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to start, I can do this with you. I can go through and help you formulate questions, but it's our experience that at the school committee level, you have such an understanding of your district and the kinds of things you want to ask that you probably have in mind the area that you want to focus on and some of the questions you want to ask already. We can help you to hone those questions if you like, but what we would suggest is that you look at the questions thematically. You're interested in budget. You're interested in collective bargaining. You're interested in special ed and how the knowledge that the superintendent has in special ed, or those obviously are hypothetical. And then, once you've determined the themes that you're interested in and sort of assigned yourselves, then you go away and develop your questions. And it's been our experience that the questions really, at your level, you can vet them with one another and run them by one another, but at your level, you really already know that. You have expertise in that area. And so you should feel confident in your ability to ask the kinds of questions that probe the areas that you're looking to probe as you look at the qualifications for these candidates. But you can always call us, and if you need our assistance, if you want our feedback, we're happy to provide it.
Can we meet in executive session to strategize questions?
No. It's my understanding you cannot. And we didn't do that in the screening committee either. That was all done in public.
Okay. Thank you.
I was going to say, that was one area where I don't think we have to worry, because it came together so greatly. And Jen opened up with her questions, and then at the end, Dennis Shaw kind of finished it up, and the rest of us all had questions that intermingled with that. And we had 12, but we never got to more than 10. But the people were so good, they were able to pull some of it in. So not to give away anything that was asked, but that it's really, when you see how it starts to go, I think we'll find that, I could tell you right now what your questions might be from having been on that committee. So I think that we don't have to get too worried about the questions.
I think that's right. I think there's a natural tendency to play off of one another, particularly because you all know one another and you work together. So I think you'll find it'll come out very naturally.
And I think that's the point of us individually having a good handful of questions to pull from, because as the conversations develop and emerge, and quite frankly, if we do have some that are redundant, if you're paying attention, well, then you put that question aside and you don't ask that, because
Exactly.
Jennifer's already asked it.
That's right. That's right. That's very
And you
perceptive.
got and if
Yeah.
you didn't get the answer you were looking for, then perhaps you ask the probing questions to get a little more information
That's right.
from that candidate.
That's right. And Jennifer, you did give them the questions that you asked in the screening
I
committee.
did
Those
give
are a jumping
them-
off point for you too.
And
as
so, and
well.
just when we did this, basically, before we left, we said, okay, what are you most interested in? What would you want to ask? And so I may have said, I really want to know about family community engagement. So I sort of took that and then worked on it and brought it back. And then as a group, we kind of refined them a little bit if we felt they needed to be. And then I think I may have cleaned it and sent it out, brought it to the next meeting so that it could all I kept it in categories based on what I heard everyone say was something they wanted to discuss. And again, we put the candidate profile right at the very top there, change leadership, communication, operation management, to make sure that we were definitely addressing those three components of the candidate profile. Because I think you can get lost in, I want to know more about this, and then not cover something completely. So it was really important to know the things that the community had said, and we then are pulled together. This is really important to Wilmington. So I think as long as we kind of stay focused on that,
I think that's good.
It'll be fine.
The other thing is you do want to keep the open meeting law in front of you at all times. You can, outside of this meeting, you cannot deliberate, even if it's on the questions. So, which is why we suggest that, you may not have an opportunity to bring everybody together and refine your questions. You may do that on your own, with people knowing the choice, the theme you've chosen, rather than actually knowing the exact question that you're going to ask. You could come together in public and do that, but obviously it requires a public meeting. And you may not have time for that, but then again, you may, depending upon how you'd like to proceed. Tom?
Yeah, I think the last interview process we went through pretty well, where we had a list of questions, and then as, like Julie said, somebody asked that question, just check it off and say, okay, X that one out and go to your next one, if you remember that.
And the questions we have, it's great to do your own questions, but there are only so many, there are lots of ways to ask a question, but there are somewhat limited number of things that you really can ask about. And if you go through the questions that we provided for you, you may find that the question is already there, and you might just want to refine it.
I just had a question. In the process that the search committee undertook, did they ask the same question before each candidate, or did they switch it around? How was that done?
I think you can.
We asked the same question, we kept the same order
Good, okay.
for every single candidate.
I think it's also, and I mentioned this to the screening committee, there's a school of thought out there that you have to ask your question the exact same way for every candidate. So you go, you read it and it comes out, you read the text and it comes out absolutely the same way each time. I would suggest to you, my view is you don't have to do that, provided you keep the theme of the question in your mind and you ask the question, because as you go through the interview process, you may refine the question. And also, asking a question verbatim sometimes reduces the conversational atmosphere that you're trying to create, because not only are you trying, in my view, not only are you trying to find out what this person knows or doesn't know, or what he or she has done or not done, you're trying to get a feel for how this person communicates, how this person relates. Because that's an important part of being a superintendent, is how this person relates to people in various contexts. So this is one context where you might want to keep in mind that although you're asking questions, you might want to try to keep it as conversational as you can, to have the back and forth and to really get to know how this person functions in a public meeting or on a one-to-one or whatever.
All right, let me see if we can get a feel for how people are feeling at this point about having 4 separate evenings, or trying to condense it.
I would say condense it to 2.
I'm sorry?
Condense to 2.
I just worry about work schedules and,
I think that would be easier to fit in more than 5 days, get it down to 2 days, and, like a suggestion, maybe do it on like a Thursday and then next one on like a Monday or something like that, give it a few days.
I'm indifferent, whatever the board feels logistically they can all do with schedules, I'd go with whatever, make it work.
My feeling is that, I'm sorry, Jen, go. I was just going to say, although it does take up 4 evenings, I hate, well, yeah, but 5 evenings, but I hate the thought of any candidate at the 3-hour mark not getting as much focus, inadvertently not getting as much focus as we could possibly do if we did each one in a separate day. Peggy?
I think in addition to that, the fact is, if we're going to have people within the school system help out, to make them do it all in 2 days instead of get some break in between, because depends upon how much we'll be asking of, say, the principals or someone within the system. I think we have to keep that in mind.
So you're suggesting that 2 days would be easier for the system, or are you suggesting 4 days would be
I
easier?
think 4 days would be easier for the system, but I could be wrong. We could ask them.
think we all need to have a good understanding of what our personal schedules are first, before we can determine, how to attack it. We can discuss scheduling, because I'm not prepared tonight to start
Right.
listing out the dates that I'm available, and Mr. Mullis isn't here. You said that we can discuss scheduling amongst us, not necessarily public.
All right, now, I'm not an attorney,
I know that.
but it's
I'm
my
not- I know.
experience and my understanding that scheduling calendars
If we-
are things that can be discussed.
if-
You might want to check it out.
If we
just
did
to
a
be sure.
simple poll, no deliberation, just a simple poll, what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
And then we take a look at, this is what the group can do, and then move forward?
We've certainly checked availability via email before, and we've never had any,
I don't
pushback
think
on
it's
it.
an issue, but I don't want to give you legal advice.
Right, no, I
So-
understand.
But the other thing you want to keep in mind now is that you've got a vacation period
Yeah.
coming up, the week of the 19th.
right.
What would be useful for us is for you to set the first date, so that at least we know that, so we can prepare people sort of in advance to say, you need to be available from this point on.
Yep.
So if you can come up with a single date when you might get started, when you might actually hold the first visitation, that could be useful. If you can't do it tonight,
Well, and
maybe
we
you
have-
could
yeah,
you do it
we'll
the
have
next day or so.
logistics of that.
That just gives us an opportunity to line people up and get them prepared.
Would we,
I think you were talking about holding the first visitation. Do you mean us to them or them to us?
Them to you.
coming here,
Okay.
would that be something you may want to run by Paul to see what might be happening within the
Right,
district?
yeah, we need to understand that,
Yeah.
too.
I think in order to establish even that first date, we would have to have
Okay.
better understanding.
Let me suggest to you that you might want to try to begin sometime the week of the 5th, maybe toward the 7th or the 8th.
Next week?
That's next week.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to run into you're going to run into the vacation week. Now, you can do that. You could do some the week of the 12th, but then you're not going to have the week of the vacation to accomplish anything.
What about, Steve?
Yeah.
If we did, how does the week of the 12th look if we tried to do 2 before vacation and then have the school vacation, then do 2 the week after vacation?
We have a budget hearing on the 14th, just to keep that,
That's just quick, though.
sorry?
We have a weekend.
We have a school committee
That's a
meeting
school
on the
committee meeting on the
14th, so that would be,
We wouldn't have it the same night as our regular school committee.
no, we
meeting.
wouldn't, no, but, I mean, it minimizes one
Oh, when we
night,
have
yeah.
available, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the week of the 12th, is that what you prefer?
Is it a problem, you think, taking that week in between? Does that cause an
Well,
issue?
again, I don't want to overemphasize this. The problem is you're competing with other districts. We
Right.
know that.
Yeah,
And so, to the extent that you can move things along, it's to your advantage. On the other hand, it's important to do it in a way that you're comfortable doing it, and in a way where you're going to put your best foot forward as a district, so.
Sorry, Jay first.
I'm sorry. Just a quick question, and if you can't say it now, please let me know, but of the candidates that have been brought forth, are they all applying in other districts as well?
I don't believe all of them are, but I know some of them are.
Okay.
And have they been named,
Um,
as we've just named them?
I don't believe so.
It's already been tweeted out.
I don't believe so, not yet.
Steve,
Yes.
since we don't have a school committee meeting on the 7th, would people be free that evening? Because all we need to know as a group is if we can come together in the evening, and then the daytime stuff we can schedule once we clear it with central office.
If we come together that evening, part of the goal would be to see how we're going to set this up and who we're going to have help us do it, et cetera.
The subcommittee?
Subcommittee, I like that subcommittee idea. But should we get the subcommittee tonight, if we can, and get that part started so that on the 7th, that would be worth the time to, to figure out the details?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but,
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
yeah, so Jen was suggesting the 7th as a first interview. My only hesitation there is that gives tomorrow, Friday,
Yeah.
no time for the district really to prepare.
That's right. Yeah,
for that
it's
visit.
a tough, you might be better off looking at the week of the 12th.
Yeah, I think so.
And maybe, maybe the 14th or 15th is one of those dates.
I gotta tell you, if we're
14th is
concerned,
Ash Wednesday.
what's that?
It's Ash Wednesday.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
but
we
we
have a
have-
school
Also
committee
school
meeting on
committee
that day,
meeting.
too.
Yeah.
We have a school committee meeting.
The 15th would probably be the only option then, if that's the case, though,
Yeah.
yes?
Are Fridays typical?
Fridays are
curiosity.
used, yeah.
Friday would be difficult for me, work-wise. The 14th, I mean, I gotta tell you, I think this is important enough, especially if we're worried about other districts. Perhaps we move our regularly scheduled meeting.
But we have a budget hearing, it's our budget
That's
hearing,
right,
so
yeah.
we've got to keep on
Yeah, that's right.
timeline.
Can you do anything on the 14th or the 15th? Is that,
So-
14th is
How
no
about the
way.
15th?
14th is no way?
Yeah, the 15th, I'm flexible, I don't know what my colleagues.
You-
The 15th, the Thursday,
Yeah.
I can be available in the evening.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the 15th, we could definitely do a start, and then, I mean, potentially, certainly for me anyway, well, yeah, all right. Then we've got a week in between.
I mean, if it makes it easy, this is a very typical conversation, by the way.
Sure.
I mean, all school committees pretty much go through this. If you want to wait and hold until after the vacation week, I mean, you can do that. Obviously, you can figure out for yourselves how that affects the search. But I mean, if that's the best way for you to do it, then obviously that's what you do.
I'm actually scheduled to be in Baltimore the week of the 26th.
The whole week?
So I think if we decide to try for the 7th, I think we can make it work quickly. I mean, we've moved fast so far. I think that if we can all come together on the 7th, I think we should
So-
do that.
In an ideal situation, if we went with the 7th, you're looking at 7th, 8th, and then what, 12th, 13th?
Oh,
Yeah, but I don't think everyone can I can do the 8th, I can do the 7th, but I don't think everyone else can do the 8th, is that correct?
I can't do
You can't do the 8th. Well, I think with everyone's availability, it almost seems to me that we should pick 2 days, like now.
How
But
about,
again, it would be pending as to what the districts got
Right.
before them as well.
How
If we've
about
got
the-
administrators out of.
how about the 12th and 13th,
okay.
Monday and Tuesday?
Yeah, I can do
12th and
that.
13th, I can do.
Just keep in mind, that's 3 nights that we've committed to school committee activities. I'm not saying that's not important, but just keep that in mind.
I can do the 12th, I can't do the 13th. I could try to do the 13th, if that's what y'all decide.
Can you do the 12th and the 15th?
I can do the 12th and the 15th. 12th and the
I can do
15th?
that.
I can do the 12th.
12th, you can't do the 15th. She can do the 12th, though.
But you can do the 12th, so we've got that date,
Okay.
if you want to use it.
So what I'm hearing is so far, we're looking at the 7th and the 12th? That everyone is available here in this room?
We don't know.
Right, all right, that's what I say in this room.
I mean, are we gonna be able to pull together the resources by the 7th to do
7th
it
is
into?
tight. 7th
I mean,
is
we have to
tight.
put a subcommittee together to work that out. I don't know if we would have the time to do that by the 7th. I think that's a little bold.
Yeah,
But
I
is
really
That
do
night,
too.
But I
As
can't.
part of this, do we still get the help of Ken and Tristan in this section of it?
Sure. I just volunteered them, I
We
guess.
asked them, yes. That's how
So, I mean, we won't literally have to go to the different, we could tell them who we'd want to ask, and then
All right.
have them set that up for us. Is Ken still back there?
Yes,
It's still back there, isn't it? He's cursing you.
If we looked at that week of the 12th again, was there a problem with the 13th? There was a problem with the 13th, right? Yes.
Can we do the 13th? I have an event, but I would try and change it.
I mean, I'm fine with the 13th. The only one we don't know about is Maddie.
We can't make,
I could, the 15th or the 16th, the Friday? No, Friday's no good. Okay.
Right.
no, that's the Friday,
I'm free.
right before February vacation, or is February
Yes.
next
Yeah,
weekend?
Yeah, it's right before the vacation.
Yeah.
That would be.
Yeah, Friday I can't do.
And then Ken, you're actually gone for the week of the 26th, right?
I'm Steve, and yes.
I'm sorry, Steve, I'm sorry.
It's been called worse.
I certainly have.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
the 26th of February right there?
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
okay.
gone the whole week, that whole week?
Yeah, well, Monday to Thursday, yeah.
Monday through Thursday. So would you be available on that Friday? The 2nd, March 2nd, do you think?
I'm actually,
You're not, okay, well,
I'm actually in Baltimore that day, like literally I'm getting to Baltimore.
Are you really? That's funny.
Switching off, that's
We're
great.
switching, same conference.
Relay race, yeah.
well, you know, this, I don't want to lead you down a path that you don't want to go down, but this may be a reason why you want to interview the candidates on your schedule and then have them visit the schools
Right,
on
exactly.
another schedule. I mean, sometimes that's what it amounts to.
Could we do like a 13th and the 15th? Like 2 days and like I said, two
Somebody
candidates?
can't do the
Someone-
15th. Julie
you can't do the
can't do the
15th.
15th.
Thursdays are.
But the-
Oh, okay.
Are we trying to set up right
Okay.
now?
I say the 7th. I think we can do it.
Well, how about this? How about we schedule the 7th pending any conflicts within the district?
And being able to get the candidate lined up first.
Of course.
Well, right,
Yeah, that's the other thing.
yeah. Well, that's
See, that's
important.
all part of it, yeah.
Jen?
I'm happy to help organize
Okay,
and get this moving quickly.
I can help you too.
all right. We've just got our subcommittee.
have we decided if we're just gonna do 1 day per candidate or 2? Because it looks like with our schedule, we'd have to do 2 per day. If we can barely find the time to meet before the end there.
And I have another question. If we, does everybody have to do these interviews at night?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, that's all I wanted to know.
You- if
So
you-
I wonder if we could start at, say, maybe like 5:30 and do 5:30 to 7, and then do 7:30 to 9?
On a Wednesday, no.
No. When can you
Can't
start?
get here before
7?
7.
So 7 to 8:30, and then
That means I'm flying in.
8:30 to 10.
Yeah, there are always all kinds, the other thing is you don't have to start, the candidate doesn't have to visit everybody. I mean, you could start at 10 o'clock in the morning with a coffee for the with the administrators, and then have a parents forum or a students forum after that, and not pack the day in. I mean, there are all kinds of ways of handling it. If you did 2 a day, could you do the 12th and the 15th?
15th we
15th's
cannot
out, we
do.
said, yeah.
You cannot do the 14th?
Or I just don't.
So
No, 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 no.
I figured you might want to go
It's
with
gonna
12
happen
and
anyway.
13.
12 and
Somebody's
13?
not gonna
Yeah,
be
who
there.
was out on the 13th? Somebody had
I
a
have something on the
conflict?
13th, but if
This is pending
someone,
Manny too, this is the only other
Right,
thing
so
too with
this
his
is
schedule.
this is the thing. We're
This
gonna
is-
end up with one of us not here potentially for all of these
And I think it's
dates.
critical for Manny to be a part, especially at this juncture. I mean, I can text him, what we can,
can you see if he can do the 7th and the 12th?
Yeah, the 7th might be aggressive, but we can try it and see how it works. I know, we'll
know we
try,
can.
we'll try.
7th and the 12th, what would be an approximation, a reasonable time frame that we would start, 6?
Well, it'd have to be
Julie said
7. 'cause
7.
she
7.
can't- She
No,
can't get
On
here.
Wednesdays, I cannot be here before 7.
But we're not talking about Wednesdays.
Wednesday, the
The
7th.
7th.
Wednesday
Oh,
the
oh,
7th.
is it, oh, I'm
Talking
sorry.
the 7th
The
and the
7th and the
12th.
12th, right?
Which would be a Tuesday.
Monday.
Monday.
Oh,
Monday.
oh,
Monday.
okay.
The 7th is a Wednesday and the 12th is a Monday.
Mondays, I can be
Okay.
here a little bit early. I can be here at 6:30 on a Monday.
Okay.
Are you texting Manny?
I'm texting him right now.
All right.
So
What do we say,
see-
February 7th and 12th?
Yes,
7th at 7,
like
and the
7-ish,
12th at 6:30.
12th at 6:30?
Have the references already been checked? I'm guessing there's lots of Googling going on. I see lots of fingers flying over keyboards.
Is that the smoke I smell?
You're funny.
Facebook will have them picked before we even get home.
So I won't be looking for the next few weeks. Oh, while we're waiting, I have a quick question. When you say the community forum, the parents, Do they supply us with feedback or no? Do we take that?
We have.
We
there's a
take that into
simple feedback sheet.
consideration?
Those, yes, you can
Okay.
have a feedback sheet. Those can be public too as well. So you want to inform people that they could be held accountable for what they say.
Feedback sheets at the events?
Yeah,
And then they come to us?
yeah.
And then
Those-
we discuss it
those are
during?
those could be in the public domain as well.
But they can be anonymous, couldn't they? There is,
They can be anonymous, yeah,
But we still discuss it publicly.
right.
yeah,
So if people go to these things, they want to send us feedback, it's all public,
probably,
and we discuss it.
yeah, probably.
Well,
I say probably because, I mean, who knows? But I think what you do is you go on the assumption that virtually everything you do is public. And the
No, I think
feedback
I'd
you
want, I
get
mean, I
is
think it
public.
should be public, I'm
Yeah,
not opposed to that,
absolutely.
yeah, no, I just mean,
Absolutely.
we're having all these, if we do these things, and they're meeting with administrators,
Yeah.
and having, they're gonna wanna provide us with feedback.
Absolutely.
And then, how do they do that? I guess, what's the means for them? Is it on paper, and it
Yeah,
all
it
comes to us?
can be, well, it can be done in a number of ways. They can call you, I suppose. They can email you, or they can put it on an evaluation or a feedback
And
form.
what's typical?
Feedback form is typical, but you'll find people may email you. People may talk to you in the coffee shop.
Well, that's why I'd rather say, here's the feedback form.
You can do that.
You can
Don't
email
answer your
that,
phone.
you can email that to me.
So are we looking at the 7th and the 12th, we think? We think.
I think, you know what, we might as well get that down on paper. And, you know,
All right,
again,
let us work on that.
pending conflict
Yeah.
within the district or with Manny.
Yeah, and it may be that when we talk to the candidates, we have to fall back to the
Exactly.
12th. We'll do the best we can, but now, if we do that, starting time, 9 o'clock, 9:30?
In the
Traffic,
morning?
traffic is an issue.
Not for our interview, for the
Right,
visit.
for the
to
visit.
Right, the district visit.
So we can tell people, that, we know you haven't got the whole day planned out yet, but if we can say, plan on being there at 10 o'clock, 9:30? How's the
9:30.
9
traffic?
o'clock, I think, may work out, because I know some of the schools will just be, Shawshene starts at 9, right?
The West starts late too.
Yeah.
So 9:30?
Well, they'll be meeting with the administrators first, right?
Usually the first meeting is with the superintendent.
So, okay, so even if they came in at 9, then you could, by the time that happens, then you can start the round.
So if
For
we're
the
going to do
first-
2 in a day, one meets with the superintendent, the other meets with the administration, and then they flip-flop.
Could be.
But we have to work in a synchronized,
Well, that's
Around
why
the
we have
school.
Trixie to,
it's a small town.
Well, the
Tristan, I
other,
mean, sorry.
the other thing is, you don't have to worry about candidates running into one another. I mean, they know who they are. So, I mean, the fact that they cross paths, or even in the same room together at the same time, it's not a big deal. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that sort of can sort of glue the whole day together is like a brunch with the administrative team. So you could sort of peg that in at, I don't know, 11 o'clock or whatever it is, with coffee and light snacks, and then work on both sides of that, is another way to look at it. So what we will do is we'll work on the 7th and the 12th,
Okay.
starting at 9:30 in the morning, and then we'll wait for you folks to fill out the day.
Fair enough.
And in the meantime, we'll be available for you for any questions and anything that you need from us. Does that sound reasonable to
Getting
start?
real.
It sounds reasonable, but can I just say, if we find out that it's not, for any reason it's not gonna work, I'd rather not present like that we're scattered.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd rather be able to cancel and say, we'll have to put it off a couple of weeks. People had work to do or whatever, had to be away for the week and we couldn't do it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely
Snowstorm
agree.
could come
Oh,
in.
yeah, and the
And
snowstorm.
then,
Well,
so,
snowstorms you have to, those, you're just gonna have to deal with those, I guess.
Right. But I think we could just agree that if we find it's way over our heads at that point, we need to step back till right after vacation perhaps.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I said pending any conflicts. I absolutely think we need to have an out clause if we need it.
So should I not be contacting anyone until I hear?
No, I would say, yeah, let's contact them, but let them know. This is, this is very tight scheduling. This is our plan
Okay.
unless anything
Okay,
comes up to prevent
yeah,
it.
be prepared for changes, due to weather and plans within the district, okay.
And we can check with Paul and Sean tomorrow morning, first thing, to see if they're available on those days, 'cause
Yeah. Julie and I are meeting with Paul tomorrow morning at 9, so
you can check right
we
away
can
and let
start,
us
we can start
know.
with that.
So I think that makes sense, and then see, okay.
Yep. And we're looking at one per day,
No,
Oh,
2.
no, that's
Yeah.
too.
2 per day.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do 2.
Now, if I can only set up one on a day,
We'll do what we can get. I
do what
think
we can do.
what we
Okay.
can.
Okay.
If we're doing 2 per day, are they both visiting at the same time and just going in different directions?
That's
Yes.
usually what you do.
Okay.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I
How would you
missed
stagger that meeting with the superintendent, just for, how would you suggest that?
It could be a meeting with some members of the administrative team on one side and then superintendent on the other, and then switch. And then a further meeting with all of them together, perhaps later on in the morning. You could do it that
For
way,
lunch, as
Yeah.
you're saying,
for lunch.
or brunch?
Yeah. If you look at the schedule, the template, that might help you in terms of,
Formulating schedules.
conceptualizing how it might all go. And if, when you get into this, you feel it's not working the way you want, then let us know. We'll work with you to make it work the way you want. It's really important that you feel comfortable with what you're doing.
I saw that it said that we should plan a part, like at 4 o'clock or so, for them to have like an hour or 2 off, so that we wouldn't bringing them someplace they could go on their own.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they asked us if they wanted to look around the school system and go back again anyway, we can say yes, right?
If you wish.
They might not, but, I mean, do
I
we?
mean, I
wish
think
to-
you want to apprise people that there'll be someone in the building. I mean, the
Yeah.
principals need to know that.
Can
Right.
can I ask, because I think I've just breezed through it, about having dinner with maybe some school committee members before the interview, or, I mean, I guess if we're doing 2, that's not going to really work well, does it? How do you offer one,
You
No,
have
said
them-
to let them go out to supper on their own, that we should give them 2 hours off.
You can do that. They
If
can
we
go out
want
on
to.
their own if you like, or you can have a buffet, and you can have the 2 of them in the same room together, eating at the same time. That's not a problem.
Yeah,
You've never had fist fights break out?
that sounds pretty
Not
good.
usually.
never done that
no,
before?
No.
That makes you.
Don't actually even have any dirty looks going back and forth. No, they're pretty good. So, I mean, again, they know who they are. They probably know personally the other people as well. So it's not an issue, really. So I will work, and Carolyn as well, will work on getting the 7th and the 12th together. In the meantime, we're also calling references. And as we get this arranged, you folks can determine how you want it to fall out after they make the visits. In other words, whether you want to make visits to their district or how you want to handle that can be a decision down the road. That sound fair? You okay with that? All right?
Question, should one of the members of the school committee or somebody be the escort for the day?
There is an escort for the day. It does not have to be a school committee member. It could be a parent.
It could be, it could be our athletic director. We forgot to mention
Oh,
how
well,
wonderful
we
he
didn't
I was
was.
thank-
actually going to ask if I could read now the
Yes.
names, and he's on there, so, and when we finish up before
He
we
did a great
adjourn.
job, yeah.
He did an excellent job. He may
So are
have,
we good for the moment? Again,
I think we're good for the moment.
I know there's some trepidation, but
Do we meet again before this happens? No.
No.
We do not. No, the next time we meet is the 14th for public session.
okay. If it turns out that the 7th isn't going to work, if that's the sense you get, then just let me know and we'll handle it.
Yeah, it's next Wednesday.
Yeah, we meet next Wednesday, don't we? But that's on Tuesday.
no, it's
No,
Wednesday.
it's
No, no, no,
Next
we
Wednesday.
don't meet.
Wednesday,
No, we don't meet.
and then the following Monday, and then the following Wednesday.
Right.
is our
14th, we
regular
meet.
meeting.
Yeah. Yes.
Can I do 2 things? Can I read the names now of the screening committee, just to publicly thank them?
Certainly.
And then, I don't know if we wanted to just each take a topic for interview questions, so that we're not, no? You're good? Okay,
Yeah, I think I want
I need to think about
mull that over a bit.
okay. Okay,
That's why I'm worried that we're not meeting again.
because the next time we see each other will be for
Given
the
our
interview.
questions and not having done.
So I don't think we need to go over questions, but if we all just want to say, for example, like I'll definitely ask about family community engagement if we want to just put out there like topics that we know are important, I guess, to make sure that everything's covered. But if you're not worried about it, that's fine.
Tom?
Well, I think what we did at the last interview thing, we came up with like 10 questions, and then there were different subjects, and we just kind of marked off what, if you just asked a question I already had kind of asked here, I'd say, okay, I'm not going to ask that, but I'd still have 8 more.
So you all brought your own and then just went through? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, someone, with 7 of us, there may be overlapping questions that may be this, looking for the similar response. That's my only concern.
Well, here's what I'm hearing. Jen has put dibs on community and family involvement. Do you have a topic that you would like to cover?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm just
It's
not
fine.
sure
I
if
think it's fine. If everyone has
education
their
in the
own-
state aspects, but I also want to know about that curriculum piece and the development of curriculum, and that, hearing someone speak about that, the passion of that development piece, you know what I mean? I want to try to find the right question to kind of watch the body presence and hear the passion about teaching come out. But I just, I've got a couple of different interests I want to touch upon, but I got to crunch on it, I really do.
That makes sense. I think
I
if
would say
everyone
everybody
brings
comes up with enough
8
questions
to
that,
10, that's fine.
yeah, if we're overlapped, we move on to our next one.
That'll work.
Unless Peggy, is there a topic you want to claim?
I know what Peggy.
No, it was interesting, as they were talking, there were some things that came out that weren't on our level, and so I have a couple of questions, but I forget what they are. But I had written down a couple of questions for the actual school committee interviews that just a level different from what they told us. But I can guarantee you, they all were enthusiastic. Even the latest one was like, oh,
Well,
it
that's a good
was
sign.
wonderful. They were talking about education, and it'll be, I think it'll work out.
It's an 18-hour day, so for most times, so.
Yeah, except for me. I'll have to go.
No, I
I'll be
know.
like, I
How many
know.
interviews per night do the screening committee do?
Is it 3?
3
Is that
per
the
night?
most?
3 at the most, I
3 at the
think.
most.
Okay. All right. And obviously, that went well. Nobody felt fatigued.
I don't, they didn't act like they were fatigued, I don't know. They may have been.
Art?
The other thing you can do on those evenings when you have interviews is actually post your meeting for 45 minutes earlier than the actual interview will take place. And that way, in an open meeting, you can actually talk about your questions and whether you want to refine them, what questions are working, what aren't. So, I mean, give yourself a little extra time, actually, before the interviews to get yourself
That might-
organized as well.
Yeah.
So if
that
you
might
start at,
justify-
if your interviews are going to be at 7, say, or 6:30, you start at 5:30 or 5:45.
And we would just respectfully ask the press, obviously, not to tweet any of that stuff out.
Well, they can tweet it if they want to, but you
Well,
can
like I
request
said,
it.
respectfully ask,
Yeah, yeah.
so that
Yeah.
nothing is given away. And I know 4 years ago, that's what I was just going to say, 4 years ago, we asked WCTV to certainly tape the interviews, but not air them until all the interviews were complete,
Yeah.
and they were very accommodating.
That's fairly common, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. yeah. People really, you'll find that the press wants this to work as much as you do,
Yep,
so.
I have no
yeah.
doubt. All right. Any further discussion?
Can I just read the names? Say
By all
thank you.
means.
Okay.
Do you want to,
Do you want to go?
Art, do you have anything else you want, or do you want to stick around for this?
Sure. I'll just
Very good.
listen to you.
All right.
So last week, we publicly thanked everybody, but we didn't name them, so I just wanted to say another thank you to all the screening committee members. Melissa McDonald represented CPAC, Shannon Sheridan Geldart represented the Boutwell PAC, and she was our highly organized secretary, thank goodness for her. Sandra Track represented the Northside PAC and the Wilmington Middle School PAC, David Ragsdale, Shawsheen West PAC, and Jennifer Jackson, Wilmington Middle School PAC. Then we had Laura Stinson, physical education teacher, representing Wilmington Teachers Association, pre-K to 5, Patrick Finn, grade 8 social studies teacher, and John Lewis, an English teacher at Wilmington High School. Dennis Shaw, the West principal, and Linda Peters, Wilmington High School principal. We also had Sean Gallagher, the assistant superintendent, Marlene Moran from the Wilmington School and Business Partnership, Jeff Hull, our town manager, and Greg Bendel on the Board of Selectmen. And like I said last week, we wanted to say a thank you to Ken Storlazzi and Tristan Dixie for everything they did, and our athletic director, Tim Alberts, for serving as a greeter.
yeah. That was
And
cool.
I think that was just fantastic and made all the candidates feel really welcome and at home before they came in for the interview. So, and of course, NESDEC for their incredible commitment and for all their leadership and support. We are just delighted to work with you and very grateful. So, all right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
All right, I believe that is, that concludes our business, our scheduled business. Any correspondence?
No, none this evening.
All right, subcommittee reports? All right, public comment? Seeing none, I would entertain a final motion. Julie? Second by Tom. All in favor of adjournment? That is unanimous. Trixie? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.